The doorbell camera captured everything. A man dragging something heavy wrapped in fabric across the pavement at 4 o'clock a.m. struggling with the weight as he pulled it toward his car. Inside that bundle was his wife. Shayla Cabrera arrived in the United States from Peru with a dream that millions of immigrants share to build a better life for her family. At 33 years old, she had become exactly what she hoped to be, a loving mother to 3 young sons ages 9, 6, and 4, living in Lancaster, California. Those who knew her described her as an unconditional friend, a loving mother, and a hard worker. Shayla's friends in Lancaster saw her as someone who radiated warmth despite carrying burdens that would have crushed others. She worked tirelessly to provide for her 3 boys, maintaining the kind of positive energy that drew people to her. In her small apartment on Lancaster Boulevard, she created a home filled with love for her children. But there was something Shayla kept hidden beneath that bright smile, something dark that only those closest to her knew about. Her husband, 36-year-old Josemar Cabrera Corno, was not the man he appeared to be to the outside world. Behind closed doors, their marriage was anything but the happy family portrait it seemed. According to Shayla's mother, Helga Rosilo, who remained in Peru, her daughter had reported Josemar for domestic violence back in their home country. The abuse had followed them across borders and oceans. It wasn't just Shayla who suffered. Rosilo stated, "She told me that he hit her, mistreated her, and even slapped my youngest grandchild, who is just 3 years old." For years, Shayla endured physical and verbal abuse, trapped in a relationship that grew more dangerous with each passing day. Her friends watched helplessly as she struggled with an impossible decision: stay and endure the violence or leave and risk losing her children to a man who repeatedly threatened to take them away from her if she tried to escape. Elizabeth Rouso, one of Shayla's friends, explained the terrible bind Shayla found herself in. She said she was just too scared because he would always threaten to leave with the kids. So, I think that was her fear. If she did anything, he was going to kidnap the kids. Those threats had kept Shayla trapped for years. But by the summer of 2025, something inside her had shifted. The years of abuse had worn away her hope that things would somehow improve, and staying had become more dangerous than leaving. By early August 2025, Shayla had reached her breaking point. Friends revealed that Shayla was in an abusive relationship and had asked her husband for a divorce. This wasn't a decision she made lightly. She understood the danger that came with leaving an abusive partner, but staying had become impossible. On August 9th, Shayla spoke with her parents in Peru and told them of her plans to leave Josemar and take their 3 young children with her. It was a conversation filled with both determination and fear. She knew she needed to protect herself and her boys. Shayla's mother says that the last time they spoke, her daughter told her she would be filing a report against Josemar in Lancaster. That conversation would be the last time she would ever hear her daughter's voice. In the apartment on Lancaster Boulevard, tension filled every room. Josemar knew what was coming. His wife, the woman he had controlled through fear and violence for so long, was planning to leave him. The mask of control he had worn for years was slipping, and beneath it lay something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Another friend tearfully recalled during a vigil, "This is really hard for me right now because we tried to get her out." The community had seen the warning signs. They had tried to help, but domestic violence cases are notoriously difficult to escape, especially when children are involved and the abuser makes credible threats. What Shayla didn't realize was that Josemar had no intention of letting her go. In his mind, if he couldn't control her any more, then no one would have her. August 9th was the last day Shayla Cabrera was seen alive inside the Lancaster apartment. On August 10th, the unthinkable happened. The exact details of the murder remain sealed in court documents, but what investigators pieced together paints a picture of calculated violence. Prosecutors alleged that Josemar killed Shayla on August 10th at the Lancaster apartment where they and their 3 children lived. Special circumstances filed by the district attorney's office alleged that a knife was used in the killing. This wasn't a crime of passion or a momentary loss of control. This was deliberate. This was final. Somewhere in that apartment were three young boys unaware that their mother was being murdered by their father. Three innocent children who would have their childhood shattered, their mother stolen from them in an act of unthinkable cruelty. After killing Shayla, Josimar had to hide what he had done. He wrapped her body carefully in a large piece of material, fabric that would later match exactly what investigators found in surveillance footage. He moved methodically, a man operating on autopilot and dark purpose rather than panic. This was a man who had already decided on his next steps, who had a plan for disposal and escape. Looking back, every choice he made that day revealed a chilling level of premeditation. In the early morning darkness of August 10th, still hours after the murder, Josimar began the process of covering up his crime. The apartment complex was quiet. Most residents were asleep. He likely thought no one would notice what he was about to do, but someone did. A neighbor returning home from a night shift around 2:40 in the morning witnessed something that would later prove crucial to the investigation. Doorbell Cabrera spotted Josimar cleaning out the trunk of the family's car in the middle of the night. She told reporters, "It was strange. I work those days and I know there's nobody around at that time and cleaning a trunk. I thought it was scary." She didn't know it then, but she was watching a man prepare to dispose of his wife's body. What happened next was captured on camera, a moment frozen in time that would seal Josimar's fate. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's Ring doorbell camera recorded something that would become the centerpiece of a murder investigation. In the grainy video timestamped around 4 a.m. on August 10th, a figure can be seen struggling with a heavy wrapped bundle. The footage showed a man dragging something that clearly contained significant weight, pulling it across the ground with obvious effort. The object was wrapped carefully in fabric to conceal what lay inside. What the camera captured was Josimar Cabrera dragging his wife's body from their apartment. He loaded Shayla into the trunk of the family car and drove her to the Angeles National Forest, a vast wilderness area about an hour north of Lancaster. The forest, with its steep canyons and remote embankments, stretches for miles of rugged terrain. It had become, tragically, a dumping ground for those trying to hide terrible crimes. Josimar navigated the dark roads leading into the forest. When he found a suitable location, he pulled Shayla's body from the trunk and threw her over the side of an embankment, discarding her among the brush and rocks like she meant nothing. He then returned home to his three sons and began constructing the lies that would buy him time to escape. 2 days after Shayla was murdered on August 12th, concerned friends reported her missing to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. When Shayla failed to respond to messages and calls, her friends knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. This wasn't like her. She always stayed in touch, especially when it concerned her children. Deputies responded to the apartment complex on the 500 block of Lancaster Boulevard to take a missing person report. But when authorities began asking questions, Josimar's stories started to unravel like a cheap sweater. Josimar gave varying accounts of his wife's whereabouts to different people. According to reports, he initially told authorities that his wife had been abducted by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It was a calculated lie designed to explain Shayla's sudden disappearance, while making it seem like she had been taken by federal authorities, something that would be difficult to immediately verify and might discourage further questions. Later, he claimed she left with another man. In a third account, he said she'd suffered an accident, but refused to provide any details. Each lie contradicted the last, raising red flags for investigators and Shayla's family. Why would a concerned husband have three completely different explanations for where his wife was? The inconsistencies were glaring. Detectives immediately suspected foul play. Shayla's friends told investigators about the years of domestic violence, about her plans to leave, about the threats Josimar had made to take the children. Combined with his constantly changing story, investigators knew they were looking at something far more sinister than a missing person case. They began looking into surveillance footage from the apartment complex, hoping to find any clue about what had happened to Shayla. On August 13th, during Lancaster Station's follow-up investigation, detectives discovered something that transformed the case entirely. They found surveillance footage from a neighbor's Ring camera that showed Josimar dragging a large object wrapped in material from the apartment complex. The damning video footage instantly transformed the investigation from a missing person case to a homicide investigation. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department's Homicide Bureau immediately took over the case. Detectives contacted the Crescenta Valley, Altadena, and Montrose Mountain Search and Rescue teams, who immediately began searching large areas of the Angeles National Forest. The forest covers over 700,000 acres of rugged mountain terrain. Finding a body there would be like finding a needle in a haystack, but investigators had to try. Meanwhile, detectives worked in conjunction with the Mexican General Consulate and the Peruvian General Consulate, issuing alerts for Josimar Cabrera. They had learned something else deeply concerning Josimar, and the couple's 3 young children were also missing. Investigators believed Josimar had already fled the United States, likely taking his sons with him back to Peru. On Saturday morning, August 16th, shortly after 10 a.m., investigators received a call from the Montrose Mountain Search and Rescue Team. They had found something. The rescue team reported they had spotted an object similar to the material that was seen being dragged by Josimar in the surveillance footage. The object was located over the side of an embankment in the Angeles National Forest in a remote area about an hour's drive from the Lancaster apartment. Homicide detectives rushed to the scene. When they examined the material more closely, their worst fears were confirmed. The investigator responded to the scene, and it was discovered that the material contained the body of Shayla Cabrera, who was pronounced deceased at the scene. The evidence was undeniable. The video showed Josimar dragging something from the apartment. That something was his wife's body. And now that body had been found exactly as the evidence suggested. For those who loved Shayla, the confirmation was devastating. Their friend, their neighbor, the smiling mother who worked so hard for her children, had been murdered by the man who claimed to love her and discarded like trash in a remote forest. News of Shayla's death spread quickly through the Lancaster community. On the same day her body was found, investigators learned that the 3 Cabrera children had been located safe in Peru and taken into protective custody. At least the boys were safe, but their mother was gone and their father was a fugitive wanted for murder. That evening, loved ones held a vigil for Shayla outside Lancaster City Hall. Women and neighbors held signs reading, "Justice for Shayla and not one more." As the vigil candles flickered in the California evening, Josimar Cabrera was thousands of miles away, having fled to Peru in a desperate attempt to escape justice. Lieutenant Michael Madigan told the New York Times that Josimar was detained in both Mexico and Peru after entering the countries by land. In each instance, he was released because he had not yet been charged with a crime without formal charges filed in the U.S. authorities in Mexico, and Peru had no legal grounds to hold him. Peruvian authorities questioned him at the airport in Lima and took the children into protective custody but couldn't detain Josimar himself. Peru's foreign ministry announced that it had repatriated the children back to Los Angeles via Mexico City to be reunited with their maternal grandmother. Meanwhile, prosecutors in Los Angeles County prepared to file formal charges. On Thursday, August 21st, homicide investigators presented their case to the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office. Josimar Cabrera Corno was charged with 1 count of murder with allegations of using a knife as a deadly weapon. The next day, the District Attorney's Office filed an extradition arrest warrant. District Attorney Nathan Hochman issued a statement. "The allegations against this man are horrific, and we will do everything possible to bring him to justice back under our jurisdiction to be held accountable." An Interpol red notice was issued for Josemar's arrest, marking him as a wanted fugitive across the globe. If convicted as charged, he faced a possible maximum sentence of 26 years to life in prison. For days, Josemar remained at large in Peru, but the walls were closing in and he knew it. On August 27, 2025, he turned himself into the Interpol headquarters in Lima, Peru. Peru's National Police Force announced the surrender with a video showing him handcuffed, wearing an Interpol insignia on his shirt, flanked by law enforcement officers. Local authorities are in the process of extraditing him back to California to stand trial. The extradition process could take several months, but Josemar will remain in Peruvian custody until he can be returned to the United States.